Last Halloween, I went to a party at a friend's house. And it was one of those last-minute invites, but the promise of drinks, music, and costumes made it an easy decision. Everyone was supposed to show up in their best costumes, and I wasn't disappointed when I arrived. And people went all out. There were vampires with fake blood dripping from their mouths, classic zombies, a few witches, and even a guy who managed to pull off an eerily realistic Michael Myers. The house was packed. The lights were dim. Fake cobwebs hung everywhere, and the eerie glow of jack-o'-lanterns lit up the corners of the room. Music thumped through the speakers, and the sound of laughter and conversation filled the air. It was just the kind of atmosphere you'd want for Halloween. I dressed up as a skeleton, face painted white and black. Simple but effective. The night was going great. I met up with a few friends, grabbed a drink, and got lost in the flow of the party. At one point, I stepped outside to the backyard for some fresh air. It was a bit quieter out there, and a few people were smoking, huddled in small groups. And as I stood there, I noticed someone standing by the fence at the far end of the yard. They were dressed in a black cloak, hood up, face hidden in the shadows. I figured it was someone trying to be creepy, blending into the Halloween vibe. But something about the way they stood there, completely still, did not sit right with me. I glanced at them a couple of times, expecting them to move, join the party, or do something, but they never did. Eventually, I shrugged it off and went back inside. Later, as the night went on, I kept seeing that same figure, now inside the house. They were always just on the edge of the crowd, standing still, not talking to anyone. And at first I did not think much of it. Everyone was dressed up after all. But as the night went on, I realized I hadn't seen them interact with anyone the entire time. No drinks, no conversations, nothing. The strange part was that no one else seemed to notice them either. At one point, I was talking to a friend when I glanced over their shoulder and saw the figure again. This time they were closer, standing in the hallway, staring in our direction. I could feel their eyes on me, or at least I thought I could. It made my skin crawl. I nudged my friend. "Hey, do you know that person?" I asked, nodding toward the figure. They turned to look, but when they did, the figure was gone. My friend laughed it off, thinking I was trying to scare them, but I wasn't. By the end of the night, the party was dying down, and people were starting to leave. I headed toward the front door, only to find the figure standing in the doorway, blocking my exit. I froze. They did not say anything, didn't move. They just stood there, completely still. Then, in a low voice, they muttered, "You're next." I blinked, and they were gone. Halloween is my favorite holiday. Every year I host a party. Nothing huge, just a small gathering with a few close friends and family. This year was special because it was the first time I was hosting in my new house. The place isn't spooky or anything, just a modest, suburban home with a bit more space than my old apartment. It seemed like the perfect setting for my usual low-key Halloween celebration. The night started off great. A few friends showed up early, helping me set out snacks and drinks. By the time everyone else arrived, the house was filled with the usual chatter and laughter. We had some Halloween music playing in the background, and the vibe was relaxed, just how I wanted it. Everything was normal until my phone rang. I did not recognize the number, but I answered it, assuming it was someone from the party running late. Instead, the person on the other end asked, "Why didn't you invite me to your party?" I paused, caught off guard. "Who is this?" I asked. There was no response. They hung up. I did not think much of it at first, chalking it up to a wrong number. But 10 minutes later, my phone rang again. Different number, same question. "Why didn't you invite me to your party?" I asked who it was again, but the call ended just like the first. By the third call, I was feeling uneasy. The voice was flat, almost robotic, and the calls were coming too close together to be a coincidence. When I asked again, "Who is this?" they hung up like before. I put my phone on silent and tried to shake it off, returning to the party. Everyone was having a good time, and I didn't want to be the buzzkill. About an hour later, we were in the middle of a game when there was a loud bang at the front door. And it was so forceful, I thought the door was going to break. And everyone froze. The noise wasn't the typical knock. It sounded more like someone was pounding with all their strength. A couple of us went to the door, but when we opened it, no one was there. The street was empty, but the thing that freaked me out the most were these deep gashes in the wood of the door, and it looked like someone had taken a knife or something sharp and dragged it down the door multiple times. My stomach dropped. I went back inside, trying not to let on how disturbed I was. Everyone was shaken, but no one knew what to make of it. I tried to brush it off, saying it was probably just some prank, but that's when my phone buzzed. I checked the text. It said, "Next time, that'll be your head." I did not know what to do. We checked the security cameras, but they did not show anyone approaching the door. Nothing, just an empty porch. The party fizzled out after that, and people left early, sensing the shift in the mood. I never found out who made those calls or sent that text, and the police did not have much to go on. I haven't hosted another Halloween party since. Halloween in our neighborhood was always something special. Every year we had this massive block party. Everyone would come together at the top of our street, setting up grills, tables, and all sorts of spooky decorations. Kids would run around in their costumes. Parents would gather in small groups to chat, and the smell of grilled hot dogs and burgers would fill the air. And I used to look forward to it every year. It was the perfect way to close out October. But last Halloween, it's something I'll never forget. The evening started out like it always did. I threw on a costume, grabbed a plate of food, and made my way to the top of the street where the party was in full swing. The kids were already running around, daring each other to approach the spookier decorations. The parents stood around talking and laughing. And it was just beginning to get dark, the perfect Halloween setting. I was with my friend near one of the grills, stuffing our faces with hot dogs and laughing at some ridiculous costume, when we heard a loud bang. Everyone went quiet for a moment, confused. Someone made a joke about it being a firework, but nobody had lit any. Then we heard it again, louder, sharper. I could see a few neighbors looking toward the Hummel's house. Their place sat on the edge of the block, slightly set back from the others. At first, no one moved. Everyone was unsure if what we were hearing was part of some elaborate Halloween prank. But then, one of the dads said, "That's coming from the Hummel's house." That's when my dad, along with a few other neighbors, broke off from the group and started walking towards the house. My friends and I stayed back, nervous but curious. We watched as my dad knocked on the door. There was no answer. After what felt like forever, the door creaked open, and they all stepped inside. And it was quiet for a few minutes. We were all standing there, waiting, watching. And then my dad came rushing back out, waving his hands and shouting for someone to call 911. I felt a chill run down my spine. My mom grabbed me by the arm and pulled me away from the house. Other neighbors started gathering closer, but there was a sense of panic now. Something was seriously wrong. Later, we found out what happened. Inside the house, Mrs. Hummel had been in the kitchen, bleeding on the floor. She'd been shot twice, once in the chest and once in the stomach. Mr. Hummel was standing over with a gun in his hand. Apparently, they'd been arguing about her Halloween costume. He thought it was too provocative, and for some reason he just snapped. The noise we heard, that was the sound of him shooting her. And I couldn't believe it. I mean, the Hummels always seemed like a nice enough couple. Sure, they kept to themselves more than others, but I never imagined something like this could happen. None of us did. By some miracle, Mrs. Hummel survived. The paramedics got there fast enough to stabilize her, and she pulled through after a few surgeries. Mr. Hummel, though, was arrested right there at the house. It turned out he'd been dealing with some pretty serious mental health issues, but no one really knew the extent of it until that night. It's been almost a year now, and Halloween is coming up again, but I can't stop thinking about last year. That sound, the moment when everything changed. I'm not sure I'll ever look at Halloween the same way again. I was invited to a Halloween party last year by an old friend I hadn't seen in a while. His name was Mark, and we'd been close in high school but lost touch over the years. The invite seemed casual, like a group of friends getting together for drinks and a bonfire, so I figured why not. And it was the weekend before Halloween, and I did not have any solid plans yet. The party was being held at his place, which I vaguely remembered from years ago. It was a small, rural town about an hour's drive from where I lived. I pulled up to Mark's house around 8 p.m. It was exactly how I remembered it. Old, isolated, with a large backyard that extended into the woods. There were maybe 10 cars parked out front, so I figured it wouldn't be a huge crowd. I was relieved since I wasn't in the mood for anything too wild. Inside, the atmosphere was typical for a Halloween party. People in costumes, bowls of chips, some cheap decorations, and a faint smell of booze in the air. I did not know most of the people there, which wasn't surprising, given how long it's been since I last hung out with Mark. Still, everyone seemed friendly, and I settled in quickly. Mark was happy to see me and introduced me to some of his newer friends. After a couple of hours, Mark mentioned that we should check out the woods behind his house. He said they had something spooky for the party, a haunted trail that a few people had already gone through and loved. It sounded fun, and everyone was up for it. So a group of about 6 of us grabbed some flashlights and headed outside. The woods were dark, but not unnervingly so. We could still hear the faint sounds of the party behind us, and the cool October air felt refreshing. Mark led the way, cracking jokes and trying to scare us with these cheesy jump scares. And after walking a few minutes, the path narrowed, and the trees got thicker. Mark said this is where the haunted part began. At first, it was just standard stuff. Some fake spider webs, a couple of creepy decorations hanging from branches. But then we reached a small clearing where the trees parted slightly, and the mood shifted. There were no more cheesy decorations, just the cold, still air, and a faint sound like whispering coming from deeper in the woods. I assumed it was someone from the party trying to mess with us, so I did not think much of it. That's when Mark's flashlight flickered out. He tapped it a few times, but it wouldn't turn back on. The other flashlights were working fine though, so we kept moving. But the deeper we went, the quieter it got. The whispering sound grew louder, more distinct. It wasn't random anymore. It sounded like voices, low and urgent, but none of us could make out what they were saying. Suddenly, one of the girls in the group screamed and pointed her flashlight at the trees. About 20 feet away, there was someone, or something, standing between the trees, watching us. It was wearing a white mask, but it wasn't a costume from the party. It looked wrong, too real. It wasn't moving, just standing there. We all froze. Mark tried to laugh it off, saying it was one of his friends messing with us, but the tension in his voice gave him away. He did not know who this was. We turned to leave, But when we did, the thing stepped closer. There was no sound of leaves crunching, no footsteps, just this figure moving silently towards us. The whispering grew louder, surrounding us. We bolted, sprinting back towards the house without looking back. When we finally made it back to the house, we were all out of breath. Mark tried to laugh it off, but none of us stayed much longer. And to this day, I still don't know who or what was in those woods that night. But I haven't spoken to Mark since, and I haven't been back to that house. It was my junior year of high school, and a bunch of us decided to hit up a Halloween house party. It wasn't even someone we knew, just a friend of a friend's kind of thing. And the place was packed, probably around 50 or 60 people crammed into the backyard. Music was blasting, and everyone was either dancing or chilling with drinks, laughing. It was a good vibe. That was until the gunshots. Well, I remember the exact moment everything shifted. One second I'm talking with my friends, and the next, pop, pop, pop. I froze. My mind did not even register it as gunfire at first, like it was too surreal. But then the screaming started, and everyone just scattered. People were running in every direction, stumbling over each other, trying to get away. Panic set in fast. I knew they were shooting from the front of the house. My brain clicked into survival mode. I grabbed my two closest friends by the arms, practically dragging them towards the side of the house. There was this old refrigerator laying on its side near the back gate, like it had been there for years, rusted and filthy. I pushed it with everything I had, just enough so we could slip behind it. We were squeezed tight between that fridge and a concrete wall, hearts pounding so loud I thought whoever was out front could hear us. The shots kept coming. It felt like forever. I don't even know how long we stayed hidden, huddled there in the dirt. Every breath I took felt like it might be my last, like any second someone was going to walk around that corner and find us. Eventually, the gunfire stopped. Silence. Then I started hearing sirens in the distance, but they were faint. We figured it was safe enough to leave, so we climbed out from behind the fridge. I led us towards the driveway, keeping as low as I could, my head on a swivel. That's when we saw him. A guy, maybe our age, was lying on the ground at the front of the house. There was blood, too much blood, pouring out of his head. His eyes were still open, staring blankly at the sky. I did not want to look, but we had no choice. The only way out was over him. I'll never forget the feeling. Stepping over his body, I kept repeating in my head, "I'm so sorry, I'm so sorry." I couldn't say it out loud. My throat was too tight. It was like my body went numb, but I felt every second, every step. My friends were behind me, and I could hear one of them crying softly, trying to hold it together. We did not stop running until we made it back to my friend's house. We just sat there, the three of us, in shock. None of us said much. It was just this heavy silence between us. We found out later that night it had been a drive-by. Rival gang stuff. Wrong place, wrong time. And that was the last random house party I ever went to. And to this day, I still see his face when I close my eyes. It's something I'll never forget.
Hey, what's up guys? It's Spooky. If you've made it this far, congratulations, you survived. If you did not know, I have an Instagram. Follow me on there so we can connect. And I also have a Patreon. On there you'll have direct access to me and can see the upcoming videos, polls, and soon-to-be exclusive stories only shared on there. If that's something that interests you, please consider joining. That's all I have for you guys tonight. Stay spooky and I'll see you in the next video.